Why can't I see my own live stream? There I am. There's my live stream. Oh, mute that, please. Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. I got it figured out. Only took me 20,000 steps. Okay. Yes, we are good. We are going. How's everyone doing? Yes, bats. I got this necklace for free. Somebody just gave it to me at a swap meet and they were like, do you want this? And I said yes. So there you go. I enjoy it very much. It's all black as well. All the metal on it is black. And look, I'm wearing, oh, you guys can't see, I'm wearing a dress because it's nice weather outside. Yay. And I'm not wearing a lot of makeup because I do not want it to melt off of my face. So I'm enjoying the nice weather. Went outside. I dressed up a little tiny bit just because I wanted to. And yeah, I'm going to fiddle with that a lot during the stream. So enjoy that. Is this a new look? It is the same look that I always do, which is I don't know what a new look means. I feel like this is my like I'm doing makeup in 5 seconds look, which is eyebrows, mascara, eyeliner, and if I have time or I feel like it's something else. So I have a little bit of a blush highlighter business happening. That's pretty much it though. Just a daily reminder to drink enough water. Oh my gosh, guys. Pink lemonade, let's go. Which is mostly water because it's with the powder. Like it's pink lemonade, but not like a country time thing. It's one of those like one of those powdered like electrolyte mixes. Like it's, you know, it's not 20 grams of sugar or whatever. It's like actually water. Rehydrate. Okay, so yeah, I feel like YouTube, like the chat is delayed, which is really weird. I don't know what's going on. YouTube always has something they're up to. YouTube always has something they're up to. So we have a couple things that we're doing today. Not really any sort of particular themes. Not really any themes for this live stream. We've done kind of a little bit of a theme the last couple times, but I thought I would just sort of open up the floor. I have been working on a couple of videos, kind of going off of the themes of the last few live streams and questions we got, which hopefully will be entertaining for you all. But besides that, it's kind of just whatever, just some ground rules to everyone. Again, as always, it is 18 plus only, as it says right below me right there, 18 plus only. Please read the rules, very important. I just have a couple things that I don't get into, either because of YouTube rules or like my experience. So for example, I do not talk about how to do edge play. So if you ask me, how can I cut my girlfriend? How can I choke my girlfriend? Not going to answer that question. If you ask me about something related to like a physical or mental health issue, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a whatever. Not qualified to talk about that. If you ask me, does this bruise mean that I broke something, or help, can I do blood play if my girlfriend has depression or whatever? Not going to be able to answer that question. Not a professional. I will direct you to resources. Please read the FAQ because if you're new here, if you haven't been here in a while, we do have very commonly asked questions such as, how do I tell my boyfriend I want to try kink? Or where did I buy XYZ thing? Or what books do I recommend? Or things like that. Answered in the FAQ. If it's in the FAQ, I will not answer your question. I have a shortened one that fits in like the text limit of the YouTube description box. And then I have a different one that is like a more complete one that's linked down below so you can read all of it in full if you want to. If you ask me something that's covered in the FAQ, I will not answer it. Otherwise, in general, ask whatever you want as long as it's within those, you know, few sort of parameters. And we hang out, we chat, we have a fun time, we answer some questions, we go off on rants, and it's usually pretty enjoyable, entertaining, and hopefully educational. Now, Other quick thing to note here is I do answer questions that are in order, so please do not spam the chat with the same question 3 or 4 times. I will give you an opportunity at the end of the stream to ask a question again, just in case I missed it by mistake, usually in the last like 5 or 10 minutes. And otherwise, if you ask me the same question 3 or 4 times in a row in a stream, I'm not going to see the 4th time before I see the 1st time. So keep that in mind. And I possibly also skipped it because it was covered in the FAQ. So keep that in mind as well. All right. With all that being said, let us get into it. Bandit. Okay. Let us see. Welcome, Finley. Glad to have you back. Yeah, it's been a while. It has been a while, hasn't it? I wonder if Evie just has an alarm set for 30 minutes before this live stream starts, and every week she's like, I forgot. No, I always know what my own stream is. I don't know what that's about. I've been streaming at the same time for like literally years at this point. But I do set, I sort of experiment with like how far in advance I have like the live stream scheduled for, because I feel like if it's too far out, like if it's too far ahead, then people like forget about it and are like, oh, whatever, that's in 3 days, who cares? And I feel like usually if it's like within a couple hours of when the stream starts, that's like the most useful. What made you want to do curly hair for the last 2 videos? Looked really nice. Did I need a reason? I wanted to try a hairstyling tool again that I've had for a long time, and I haven't done it in a video for a while. There you go. Not that complicated, unfortunately. I just was like, oh, it's been a while since I've like done my hair with this thing. I guess I'll do that. And that's the reason for it. Bandit, my goodness. Oh, by the way, current live stream goal. We are working towards getting a Bandit camera. She has a little bed that she likes to curl up in for most of the evening, right next to where I live stream, and we're working to get a camera that will be able to allow you guys to see my curly. Why did I say that? My cute, adorable. What words did I just combine to do that? My wonderful, adorable, lovely little dog. You guys want to see her during the live stream and observe her cuteness. That is how that will happen. Also, if you do want to make sure your question is answered, the best way to do that is with a super chat, which is through YouTube or going through Streamlabs. If you do use a YouTube super chat, be aware they do take 30% of your money, just because that's YouTube is running a racket. But if you want to make sure that you make the most of the money with your donation, also allows you to do voice to text. You can use the Streamlabs option, which works pretty much exactly the same. It will function more or less identically, but that is also the best way to make sure your question gets answered. I have a question about sissy humiliation. How far is it okay to go out in a public hospital place? Do not disturb nurses and doctors that are just doing their job, sir. That would be my answer. If you are doing something that is plainly visible to other people around you, don't do it. I would honestly, like, the politics of like sissification and like it's complicated. Cause like, I guess you could wear like kind of femme clothing out if you wanted to, but like it gets into like this trans like politics thing that I'm like not overly comfortable talking about as a cis person. But like my apprehension is that like if you present like sissification in a public space to like vanilla people, they are going to connect it to trans women, and because there's like a really toxic assumption that like trans women are fetishists, and so I think that could also negatively contribute to like stereotypes about trans women to like do sissification in public. Because like a cis person that randomly observes that isn't going to be able to tell a difference between like a consensual fetish that has nothing to do with like gender identity and like an early transition trans woman or like a trans woman that doesn't pass. So I'm not trans. I'm not a place to have those, opinions. I would love to hear if there's any trans people in the chat that would like to contribute their thoughts. Please do. I would love to read them out loud. But in general, I think kink of any kind, whether that be, sissification or pet play or whatever, I really, really am strongly against doing it in public. You can do things that are like under your clothes, for example. You can do things like, have a harness on under your clothes, or you can text somebody when you're at dinner together and like role play that way. But I think anything that like has a reasonable possibility that it could include non-consenting spectators, and if you say that spectators don't count, I would like to direct you to the exhibitionists and voyeurs, because even just watching definitely counts as participating in BDSM play. So I'm very cautious about that. It's generally not a recommendation to do that unless you're doing something that is very subtle, such as things under clothing, text messages, whispering to your partner, using subtle signs and signals to do something. Or best option is to do things in a public place that's kink affiliated. So going to a dungeon, going to a camping trip in a remote part of the woods with other kinky friends, or renting a cabin or something to sort of, have it to be in public, as in around other people, but not be in a place where you're like exposing children or people just trying to do their job or whatever else. Like, just be considerate of other people. Like, your kink, getting to do your kink is not like more valuable than like other people's like safety and comfort in a public place they're sharing you with. Like, just be a respectful neighbor is really, we learned that in kindergarten, right? Be a respectful neighbor. Do that. Remember that everybody has a phone now. Everybody's on social media and TikTok, whatever else, and you never know what's going to be the next viral video. We just had something a couple months ago where like a random, like very young pro-dom that was a survival sex worker did a scene with a pet player, where the pet player wanted to go into a grocery store and be walked around on a leash in the grocery store. And that went absolutely viral. Everybody and their mom was talking about it. And obviously that person had no idea that could happen, but that's the kind of thing that you risk happening when you do kink in public. Is like, no, like it's like the worst possible form of outing. Because it's like you're literally going to be talked about in front of like millions and millions of people across all sorts of social media, and that has a lot of social implications for the kink community, because that gives everybody an opportunity to be like, look at these bad kinky people, they're already shoving their kink on everybody else, isn't this disgusting, we need to ban this, right? Like it makes people really hate kinksters, and like, just respect other people, please, just because unfortunately that's society, right? That is my exact quick makeup routine. Yes, it is very useful to feel like a human being. Not that I don't feel like a human being without makeup, but like, there's degrees, right? There's degrees of it. Evie breaking out the crystal light and bringing back 1996. Hey, it's okay to like crystal light. Okay, that's what I grew up on. We love crystal light in this house. Literally every day. Like, for me, my perfect summer routine is like, I like working, and then I like taking like a break for like an hour or two to get a glass of lemonade and read a book. I've actually been reading 2 books simultaneously, which I don't normally do. I have been reading the polyamory breakup book, which is really useful. And like, I know the title is like, oh, we're dealing with breakups. It's more than that. It's like, it's not just, there's a lot of like vanilla books about breakups that are really catered to like, how do you get through this breakup that like just happened to you? That's not what this book is. This book is like identifying reasons for why polyamorous relationships end and how they end, and identifying problems before they get to that point, and also helping you understand ahead of time what you need for compatibility long term to prevent you from ever getting in the scenario where you have these really dramatic breakups. Because when you are in poly and you have breakups, there is this thing called like the poly domino effect, where like the ending of one relationship ends to the dissolution or the just sort of, it taints other relationships outside of just the one that ends, typically in a poly setting. And so, setting yourself up for success, understanding what you need from relationships, understanding what contributes to relationships ending is really important no matter what relationship stage you're in. And I'm finding it really helpful for the ways that it breaks down like poly causes for ending relationships, just regular life causes for ending relationships, dealing with all of that and identifying it ahead of time, I think has been really useful. I talked about it on Patreon yesterday. I read a little bit of it during a stream. There is one part of it that I do disagree with, which is they talk about sex addiction. Okay, this is a controversial opinion, and like, maybe one time I'll make a video about this or have somebody on an interview to talk about this. Personally, for me, based on what I understand about the research, I do not believe that sex addiction exists in the same way that like alcoholism or like drug addiction does. And I think that calling it an addiction in that same way is mislabeling something that I think is more accurately described as maladaptive coping mechanisms and a habitual preference for a certain toxic behavior to like relieve anxiety, run away from things, all that other stuff. So I think because what ends up happening, what happens in this section of the book, this is just like the first thing I've read that I haven't agreed with. So I want to get that out there in case anybody's like particularly sensitive to this and like wouldn't want to read a book that contains this stuff. But like it talks about stuff like there's this passage where they describe like how sex addiction like ruins relationships. And like the example they give is like somebody that gets fired from their job because they keep sexually harassing coworkers. And I'm like, so we're excusing this behavior as being rooted in sex addiction, and I feel like there's more to it than that. Because like my problem with like mislabeling things as like addiction that aren't really addiction is like it prevents people from getting the right treatment. And also it does this stuff where I understand that part of like the recovery process is obviously like apologizing and understanding for things that you've done because of your addiction that have hurt other people. Oh, thank you, Michael. Caught the stream last night and now this. Thank you for your well-earned wisdom. Thank you so much. It kind of like, it removes culpability in this weird way because the way that the person talked about it in the book, who by the way is a therapist, like it makes it seem like, oh, poor them, they have a sex addiction, they can't help it. And I'm like, well, this person like has been repeatedly fired from jobs because they sexually harass their coworkers. Like at what point do we like start putting the burden on them to not do that, to not do a sexual harassment? It just seems weird to me. And I follow like people like Dr. Lay and other people on Twitter that are sort of, pioneers in psychology and psychiatry that have researched this a lot. And like their understanding is that sex addiction isn't, really best understood as like under the addiction model. It's better understood through sort of other things, but that's like a whole other subject. I'm not prepared to talk about it right now, but I do really enjoy that book. It's been really useful. And the other book that I've been reading is called Conflict is Not Abuse. I cannot remember who that is by. It's a challenging read because it very much flies in the face of like the hegemony of the way that we talk about like conflict, especially in like social media spaces, which is really interesting. But also like about every other page I go, wait, what? I go, but no, wait, that sounds like victim blaming. And like it's very challenging to read, but I think in a way that I'm still getting interesting ideas from it, even if I don't agree with it every step of the way. So those are the two books that I'm reading right now. Hopefully you guys enjoy that while I enjoy the sunshine. I got my lemonade, got my vitamin C, and I read a book. And it's a great break from staring at the computer. Instead, I stare at my Kindle outside, which is way better. Much improved. Oh, interesting question. Hi, Evie. Hopefully you'll be able to help me. Can you have different kinks online in real life? For example, I don't think knife play is for me, but I have no problem role playing that online. Is that weird? I don't think that's weird at all. I think that totally makes sense. I think for my brain, the way that I see that, the way that I normally describe that is like the difference between fantasy and reality. And usually when I talk about this, I talk about somebody that like either has been watching porn or has fantasies or has role played for a long time thinking they want like a 24/7, total power exchange MS relationship. And then when they get into doing like actual kink in like real life and kind of in the context of their everyday existence and what they're capable of and compatibility, what they actually like doing and all of that, what ends up happening. Bernadette, do not scratch the carpet, please. Come on, come over here. No scratch carpet. Thank you. You will come up now as punishment. You will be lifted up to help me answer this question. So the way that I normally describe it is fantasy versus reality, where like the fantasy is really hot and amazing and you spend so long engaging in that when you get into real life, it's like shocking that you don't like it because you've been role playing and been so invested in it for so long. And I think this is almost like the opposite order of that, where it's like, oh, I like this in real life, or I don't like this in real life, but I can tolerate it online or like it online. And I think that totally makes sense. I think it's perfectly acceptable to have kinks that you only want to exist in the realm of fantasy, or in this case, online role playing. Because like for me, I don't know if this is going to be like insulting to anybody, but I don't mean it that way, is that like I see online role playing, like if you're just doing like text message role play, or you're on like a chat website or something, where if you're just role playing that over text, like that is essentially just engaging in a collaborative fantasy. And so you're removed from a lot of the context of things that you would do in real life in terms of the risk, the skill needed, the actual physical sensation of it. And there may be things like, sort of for me, if you do have real life kink experience, maybe part of the reason that you like knife play, for example, but you don't like it in real life is because online you're getting like all of the benefits of like the online component of it, which is you're getting that feeling of submission, you're getting that feeling of power exchange, like you're getting the elements of it that you like without the elements you don't like, which is like, what if this leaves a scar? What if this really, really hurts? What if I can't handle the pain? What if the blood makes me freak out? Like whatever other reason you don't like, you just don't like the sensation, but you can, when you're doing it online, just a fantasy, you can remove all of the external factors that you don't like about a thing, and you're left with this very like pure distilled form of it that can be much more enjoyable than the complicated reality of doing that thing. Does that make sense? So I think it's very normal, and I think a lot of us have fantasies that or types of kink that we specifically like to do just as a fantasy that maybe we keep for ourselves, but that we don't necessarily engage in real life. A lot of us have a degree of separation there, not necessarily on purpose, but just that we have different preferences, or our partners have different preferences, or whatever else. So all of that stuff. Oh gosh, so many questions. Okay, I think I found where I am. Okay, what tips or advice would you give me? I'm married. I've met a married guy in an open relationship. He is a switch, and I'm new to the community. It's all new for me. My advice is to back away slowly. I say this with all the peace and love in the world. Okay. Actually, let me ask this question. So are you like, so it sounds like you're new to poly and BDSM, correct? Both new to poly and to BDSM. Is this person also new to poly and BDSM? I really, 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 really really do not encourage people that are brand new to poly and to kink get into a poly relationship that also has kink as the main element of it. That's like way too many new things at once. That's a lot of stuff to juggle for you emotionally, lots of feelings to deal with, subspace, new relationship energy, sub-frenzy, jealousy from the other person's partner, navigating open relationships in general, the communication that's necessary for all these things. Like, that is like so much like, I'm not saying this in the way where I mean like monogamous relationships are less evolved than poly ones. It's not what I mean. But I mean, when you're in like a monogamous, like vanilla relationship, like the floor of like communication that's necessary is like here. When you do kink or poly, it's here. When you do kink and poly, it's here. Like there's just like the levels of communication and like that are necessary is like, it's a lot. And I wouldn't want you to be overwhelmed, but like how much newness is going on. So what I would do is I would make sure that person is aware that you are new to both poly and kink. And if you decide you wanted to be in a relationship with this person of some kind, you very, very explicitly outline exactly what that relationship is going to be, and do not bite off more than you can chew. I would in particular be, frankly, I am nervous. This is me. This is my own bias. I am nervous with married men in open relationships, especially like for somebody that's new. Because being in an open relationship can mean a lot of different things. That can mean you're only allowed to have sex with this person once a week, and outside of that, you're not allowed to have any contact with them, no romance, no whatever. And the thing is that if it's closer to that scenario where it's like the relationship is like barely open, kink is a very powerful bonding experience. And especially if you're switching and you are doming and subbing to each other, like that's going to be a lot of bonding. That's going to be a lot of closeness. And a lot of people are actually more threatened by a depth of emotional intimacy more so than a sexual intimacy. For most people, some people, they don't care about the emotional stuff, and the sex thing is like their main source of jealousy. But it's like, it could be a lot to deal with. You know, if this is a really good person and you like them, like also just like friendship is also totally an option. Like you don't have to engage in a relationship with this person if they just seem like a cool person to be around that can help introduce you to stuff. Like you can also just be friends and not engage in sex or kink or a relationship or anything else. But anyways, get back to me on the details if you want to. But I and also it's like, is the person I'm assuming the person he's married to is totally aware of this. Is the marriage open on both sides? You know, when they say open relationship, do they mean like barely open or do they mean full on poly? Because some people use open relationship as an umbrella term, and for some people open just means, oh, we have sex with other people and that's it. So lots of stuff to figure out, lots of stuff to navigate. I wish you the best. It could be both an exciting and also scary scary time, I guess. Okay, interesting question. I don't know why I scratched on my face like that because there were ellipses and then there was a smiley face with like two with two smileys on it, and like it made my brain short circuit for some reason. I had trouble processing what that was supposed to be. I'm Polly, but I'm going to my first sex party tomorrow, and I'm going in cold. Any advice? Haha, diving in after much thought. I am Polly. So you're going in. You say Polly, and I'm gonna be the gatekeeper person. Going to a sex party isn't what makes you Polly. Swinging is like going to an orgy doesn't make you polyamorous. Polyamorous is about like having like multiple like fulfilling like outside relationships, like dating multiple people essentially. Um, Going to a sex party doesn't necessarily mean you're like engaging in polyamory. You're going to meet poly people. It may be organized by poly people. It may be for poly people. I don't know. That's my general, in the most general sense. A sex party does not necessarily mean anything about poly. It just means orgies, doing sexual stuff, swinging, maybe things along those lines. As far as going in cold, I don't know if you're going as a single man or a single woman or as a couple or what's going on. I can't really offer any advice because I mean, I go to Bdsm parties a lot, you know, and I've been to poly events, like that stuff. I have not been to a sex party. I have not been to like a proper like orgy. The only reason anybody there is to have sex with multiple strangers. Like I'm asexual. That's not really my jam. My advice is I would really read the rules thoroughly. If they have rules available, if they don't, please ask ahead of time. I would really want to make sure, if I was going to a sex party, I would want to make sure what would make me comfortable would be things like a STI screening, for example. What is their consent policy? What is their policy around safer sex practices? You know, also, this is also still during COVID. So are they doing COVID tests, or is it only people that are vaccinated? Like, what's going on there? There's a lot of questions up in the air. What are their cleaning practices, right? Do they have like disinfectant available? What is their protocol around? There's just like so many things. There's just like so many questions I would need to have answered. That would be my concerns going to a party like that, because like, especially with the consent part of it, that can either be really good and really robust, and they've got a really great system in place, and safe words and color-coded armbands and things to let you know what people are open for what. And sometimes it's a fucking free-for-all with no safe words, and it's a consent nightmare. And I would not want to go to the latter. It would not be a fun time. But I wish you the best. I just want to make sure, because we're talking about poly, I want to make sure like definitions are clear about like what I mean when I say poly versus when I say other things. Orgies, sex parties, that's not polyamory. It can be hosted by polyamorous people. It could be for poly people, but I would not. I am wary of conflating the two, is what I would say. That is what I would say. What is your opinion on how long a chastity belt can stay on? I feel like that depends entirely on the design of the chastity belt, and also what genitalia you're working with. Like the chastity, like a plastic like penis cage For example, I don't have a penis, and I also don't play with anybody that has a penis in this way. So I'm really not the best person to ask. I believe Pup Amp of What's a Safe Word has a video about this where they talk about chastity devices. The general best rule of thumb would be, I would say, like, leave it on for shorter periods of time and then work your way up to what feels comfortable. Personally, especially because of the devices, like the most common ones are very difficult to clean like thoroughly, especially while they're being worn. I would maybe not wear one for longer than like 24 hours, probably. But again, I do not have a penis. I do not play with chastity devices in this way. I'm not the best person to ask. But I have read a couple of books where they talk about chastity devices briefly, and my understanding is like extreme long-term wear of chastity devices can lead to some pretty gnarly issues. So, you know, I would say probably a couple hours is fine, and a couple of weeks is not. That's what I would say. That's what I would say. Well, so the thing is I always stream every Friday at 6. So, it's always going to be at 6. This isn't a random live stream. Like it's been Fridays at 6 p.m. for like 2 years at this point. So, if you ever need a reminder, it's always every Friday at 6 p.m. I have only recently started scheduling them as like a friendly reminder to people that don't listen to the reminder that they're every Friday at 6. But they're not at random times. It's always the same. So, just check back here around the same time on Fridays. That's going to be here. It's going to be here. Thank you. Hair does look pretty good today. It's the lighting. A friend expressed interest in latex after I showed her some pics of me in a lovely Honor dress. Honor is a brand of latex for those listening. What is the best way to gently introduce her to the subject? Is this person kinky or not? I feel like that's an important part of this answer. Assuming they're kinky, but they haven't done anything with latex yet, I would introduce them to something that's like really like simple. Like a lot of people usually start with like latex gloves, for example, because they're very tactile because they're on your hands. It's easy to buy because usually they're one size fits all, unlike pretty much other kind of latex garment. And also as well, you have to be careful. Obviously, do they have a latex allergy? In particular, if you're doing things around the head, actually, you may not even know you have a latex allergy until you put it on your face, because for some reason the face seems to be particularly sensitive in like reaction to latex compared to other parts of the body. But my advice would be like just wearing a latex glove, seeing how it feels, and just introducing it to them that way with like a really just simple thing. In the same way that you would like, you know, if somebody's new to flogging, you show them a flogger, right? You let them hold the flogger, you explain the parts of the flogger, and, you know, you kind of just let them know what it feels like in their hand and the texture of the leather and all of that. It's just about like simply introducing the object, not playing, not doing some kind of latex inflation sensory deprivation scene or whatever. Like just really, really simple. Like, here's this thing, here's the texture. You can smell it, you can feel it, you can really understand about it. You know, and then they can go from there if there is more interest. Or sometimes they just go, yeah, I don't get it. And then it's just, okay, now you know what it is. You know, sort of that initial introduction and the reaction to it would obviously dictate any further explorations into that area. Evie, can you say trans rights? Hell yeah, trans rights. Always trans rights. Never in doubt on this channel, for sure. It has not been going good as far as the trans rights are concerned. Not looking good right now. We're been on a little bit of a downswing. Not a fun time. You've talked about public lately. What else can be done? Visibly somebody handcuffed. I would not recommend handcuffing somebody in public. That, you don't, here's the thing. You don't want to do anything that could accidentally be misconstrued by vanillas as like a human trafficking scenario or domestic violence. So you got to be really careful about that. So I wouldn't recommend handcuffs because, like, just don't do anything that's going to get the cops called on you, please. Don't do that. Just don't. And, you know, there's not really a way to be, like, subtle with handcuffs either. They're, like, they're there. I have a very, and, like, I'm talking about from my perspective, I have an extremely low tolerance for, like, risk as far as, like, exposing people and, like, getting the cops called on me because somebody thinks a domestic violence thing is going on or, like, human trafficking or something. So I act in accordance with that level of risk for me. I guess you could try handcuffing somebody in public, but for me, there's just, like, I imagine, like, 20 different scenarios that happen where, like, that leads to somebody, like, getting arrested on, like, you know, forcing somebody into servitude or whatever. Like, you know, that's kind of an extreme case, obviously. I don't think stuff like that happens, but it just don't ruin your night and make it awkward because you have to wait for police to show up. That's really what I have to say. Okay. So Gravy says, as a trans person, sissification makes me unbelievable uncomfortable. Don't be doing obvious stuff in public. Jesus. Trans woman here just came in as you called for a trans voice. Miss, what opinion asked? Yes, I asked about sissification in public and, you know, the fact that my interpretation of it is that doing sissification in public in particular isn't only dangerous to the individual doing it, but also could potentially inadvertently, you know, perpetuate harmful stereotypes about trans women. That was my concern, and I wanted to make sure that trans voices in the audience were heard on the subject as opposed to my waffling. Just don't bother strangers with what gets you off, just to have manners. You think that's a simple request, and apparently it's not. People are real reluctant to obey that simple rule of thumb of being a human and, in fact, a society. Okay, serious question. Okay. Me and my wife are a DDLG. It's hard for us to find friends who's in the community. We're also in a Dom sub dynamic. I don't know. Is that it? I guess that's the whole question. There's not actually a question in there. There's a statement. I'm gonna guess the question is, how do we find friends who are in the community? The DDLG community online is huge. So, like, I don't know where you've been looking where you haven't been able to find this. It's literally everywhere. Instagram has a DDLG community. I think TikTok does. YouTube has a bunch of people that talk about DDLG. FetLife, obviously. There used to be Tumblr blogs. I don't know about individual forums anymore. I'm not into DDLG, so I don't follow that stuff. But there at least used to be many forums where you could socialize with other people that were into DDLG. So it's extremely common. It's very popular. If you look in the right places, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to find, you know, people in that community. FetLife is the best place. I've talked about it like a million times. FetLife, FetLife.com, FetLife.com. That's the place. You go there. There's lots of groups, lots of ways to meet people locally or on the internet or whatever it is you're looking for, classes, anything you want. It's on there. There you go. I've been in the community since 1986. Do you agree with the new, quote, sugar baby or the higher volume of money-related relationships will bring a bad reputation to our community if this continues? Sugar babies aren't part of the BDSM community, though. They're sex workers. Given the fact sugar babies hate being called sex workers. I'm sorry, darlings. You're part of the hierarchy. Get over it. The thing that I see more is like findoms, right? Like findoms are like the it thing right now. Like a lot of people are into fin with an N, findoms, and I think online, like, there's a lot of issues with catfishing that are related or scams. I think that's like the main issue. But in real life, like, I don't think to this day, I don't think I've ever gone to a BDSM event or a party or a munch or anything where like somebody was there as like a sugar baby on a date with like a sugar daddy, or was like a fin dom like trying to get a client, or any like I haven't really seen a lot of mixing up of like professional services into the BDSM community in that way. And I also have not seen it be that like people expect like sugar babying as part of like a DS relationship. I would say I do have another video that's like a year or two old at this point where I talk about like should your dom pay for you is the title of it, about like the expectations of like monetary exchange as part of DS, where there can be this element where like submissives do expect their dominants to like provide for them financially, because that is a very like core part of like how our society like sees power, is like who is like giving and receiving money and getting support and all that stuff. So that's like the closest thing I can really see to that happening. But I think that stereotype's been around for way longer than just the last couple of years. I don't think that's like a modern invention by any stretch of the imagination. And yeah, higher volume of money related relationships. I think they're just still separate. From what I can tell where I live at least, and sort of the online spaces I'm in, I don't really see that they overlap that much. Like the people that are going for like money related relationships like findoms or sugar babies or things like that, like they're in their whole other thing. Like I don't even think they're even allowed to be on FetLife anymore. Like I don't even think you can talk about like pro dom sugar baby stuff, like things like that on like FetLife. I remember for a while, at least after the last time that FetLife went through an issue with payment processors, they had to get rid of all that stuff on the website. I don't know if they've re-added it since then because I haven't checked, but it was gone for a while at least. So like from what I can tell, they're separate, and then like because there's like pro like dom like professional BDSM services, and there's the actual BDSM community, and there's definitely overlap. Like especially a lot of like service providers definitely have presence in both places and have personal BDSM relationships as well as doing it, you know, as part of their job. But I don't like if I see somebody that's trying to do one and the other, what usually ends up happening is you get male submissives. What they want is a pro dom, and so they treat everybody, including the lifestyle community members, like they're all pro doms. And they're like, hello, random internet stranger, can I pay you $500 for you to peg me? And it's like, that's not how this works. Or they do this shit where they start off a message and they're like, oh, please, great mistress. And they use all these titles and capital letters and shit that's just like, oh my God, slow down. On the wrong website. And they think that like everybody, like, they think that all women on like FetLife or other like kink websites just exist to be hired for their pleasure. And it's like, I don't know where you got your wires crossed about this, but like that's not how this works. It's just some of us like doing this, and we're this is not an auction. This is not a negotiation website for like professional services. Like, I don't know how you got that, but yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't have any impact. I think it's very much contained to a professional. I think it's affected a lot of pro dom's work in terms of like their sort of what's expected from clients and like sort of what's popular and things like that. But I haven't really necessarily seen it affect the lifestyle community too much. I think we're just talking about LEDs. We're having a whole ass separate conversation in the comments about LEDs. Oh no, we're at the bottom of the chat. No, scroll back. I have so many questions that I missed. Okay, got him. My thing is about kink in public is I'm not sure where the line is when I go into little space in public. If I don't step on the crack in public, or when I go into play the swings in the park doing things on my own. Well, here's the thing. I'm saying like things, my line is things that are plainly visible to others. If you're just like in your head and you're feeling something, like that's not the same. There's a difference between like dressing in a onesie and a tutu, using a pacifier, and then going into Build-A-Bear workshop with your daddy while using a baby voice. And then there's like quietly being on the swing set by yourself when the park is empty and there's no kids in it. Like, you know, there's two very different scenarios there. I think of, I understand sort of where it might be kind of fuzzy to draw a line, but and for me that line is like, is it plainly visible? Like people can't see what's going on in your head. If you're doing the little thing in your head about like, you know, do I step on the crack on the sidewalk, or like, you know, doing hopscotch or whatever, like I don't think that that's like malicious enough or obvious enough to where I would really worry about that, because it's like primarily existing in your head, and that's not going to be visible to other people, which is like the thing that I would be worried about. Probably would not recommend doing baby talk with like a grocery store clerk, for example. But I'm not really worried about what people are like role playing or doing in their heads or things like that. It's about what's visible with the eyes that can be detected by other people that haven't been consented to it, or haven't consented to it rather. Yeah, or like, you can build sandcastles, you can go to the park or the beach. I mean, again, the barometer is like how plainly visible is it? Obligatory unicorn hunter warning. Oh my god, you're right. I totally missed that in that question. Like, for sure, like if you're dealing with like a married couple that like is looking for somebody that's brand new to kink and BDSM, like definitely, yeah. I guess because she had only said that she met the husband. I didn't even factor like the wife into that relationship conversation. But yeah, absolutely, definitely would need to look at that. Married and open relationship only works if they've been doing that over literal decades. Yeah, it's a difficult process. It's a difficult process for sure. Have you done a video on dating app device? Because I'm considering going back to OKC to find a partner. I've been meaning to do videos about like dating apps for a really long time now, and I haven't actually gotten around to it yet. I do think that OkCupid is a perfectly fine way to meet a kink partner or like a poly partner. It has like, OkCupid is like a lot of poly people are on there. But the thing is that like in order to catch a rainbow trout, there has to be a rainbow trout in the pond where you're fishing from. And so if you're on a dating app and you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of kinky people in it to begin with, or doesn't have a poly community or things like that, it's obviously going to be much harder to find those people on a dating app near where you live, because those people are just inherently rare to begin with. Whereas if you're in a place where there are poly people, there are kinky people, they're gonna be on the app. And depending on which one you're using, I think there's like Tommy and fucking Bumble and Tinder, and there's like a lot of different apps. I only use OkCupid. I can't be arsed to like spend that much time having that many profiles in that many different places, because I don't care that much. But you definitely can use OkCupid to find both poly and kink partners should you desire to do so. And I definitely prefer OkCupid because I describe it as like the middle road of dating apps. I talked about this yesterday during the live stream on Patreon, but I describe it as the middle ground because, like, and again, I don't really use these apps, but my impression of them, at least from the people that use them, is that Tinder is like primarily hookup, sex, short-term relationships, that kind of thing. Bumble is like divorced Christian women. Like people looking, like a lot of very religious people, a lot of people looking to settle down and get married, a little bit more of sort of a mature crowd, I guess. And then OkCupid is kind of like late 20s, early 30s people that kind of have their sexuality figured out, know that they're, poly or doing poly, or know that they're kink or want to try kink, but are like, they're not looking necessarily entirely for short-term hookups. They're not looking necessarily to like, you know, get married and have a good Christian family or whatever. I consider it sort of more of the middle ground of the apps that I'm more tangentially aware of. But of course, totally varies depending on where you live, who uses the apps, obviously how you use the app, what kind of people you say you're attracted to, how you narrow down the credentials of the sort of people you want to match with. Like it depends on a lot of factors. It depends on a lot of factors. And for using OKC in particular, answering questions and answering as many questions as possible will yield the most accurate results. Good poly relationships is like hiring for a job. Nobody wants someone who has no experience because it will 99% end in complete disaster instead of 85% end in complete disaster. I mean, personally for me, I do find that to be a little bit pessimistic because like poly is so underrepresented as like a relationship choice to people. They don't even realize that like poly is an option for a long time. So they don't really get opportunity to like practice it or see good representations of it or see other people demonstrate it in their life to know how to do it well. And, I think all of us, that are poly have to start being poly at some point. And usually like a first one or two like poly relationships, they're pretty messy. They're like pretty messy, but they're not like, I don't think they're doomed to fail from the start, because like I think if we made it seem that way, like nobody would ever try poly, because like, well, every relationship I get into is gonna fail because I'm new, and I wouldn't want to discourage people that way. Thank you, C. Yes, happy Friday indeed.
C donated $15. Happy Friday.
Yay, we love Friday. Okay. Yes, sex parties are great, but bring a whole box of condoms and your own lube. Yes, that's also a good point, especially if you have sensitivities to lube. Definitely make sure, and condoms as well. Make sure you got the stuff that you like that works for you, because you never know what they're going to have at the place. And people really having orgies during COVID. I don't know where this person lives. I guess it's tangentially possible that they live in a place where like COVID's fully under control. But yeah, doing an orgy during COVID is. Imagine having a super spreader event where you're also like outed as like being part of an orgy. That seems wild. What are your thoughts on sexual tarot decks? Uh, I don't know. I don't know what does that mean? What is a sexual tarot deck? I don't know. I guess I think that sounds interesting, and I think if anywhere was going to be sex positive, it would be the astrology and magic and pagan community. So good for them. Where can I find monogamous people in the kink community? The same way you find anybody else in the kink community. There's this misconception that like everybody in the kink community is poly. I've literally talked about this. I think it's called The Biggest Misconception About Kink. That's what that video is about. Is everyone thinks that everybody in the kink community is poly. They are not. The reason why you see people in open relationships are people that also different people define monogamy differently. So like some people consider themselves monogamous even if they do BDSM with like friends or whatever in a casual way. Other people that would not count as being monogamous. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But the thing is like for monogamous people, there's not really as much of a reason to like be in the kink community, especially because they would have to deal with like so much jealousy just even being in a lot of those scenarios. That they like it's easier to like not be in the community and there's less reason to be in it. So they generally aren't as active in it if they are there. Because like monogamous people see munches as being hunting grounds for doms to steal their submissives and submissives to be stolen away by other people's doms. They get squicked out by dungeons and seeing other people do sex unless they're voyeurs and exhibitionists, and they're also worried about like a dom impressing their submissive too much and stealing their partner away. They have a limitation on like how much they can really socialize, because a lot of monogamous people are really threatened by like just friendships with people of the opposite gender. And so there's just a lot of things that like make it so like monogamous people don't generally like enjoy like being part of the BDSM community as much, just because it's like if you haven't worked through those things and if you're a person that's like really prone to jealousy and insecurity, it's like easier to just like not be part of that stuff and think about it. But that doesn't mean that everybody in the BDSM community is poly, because it's not the case. It's just like you have to remember, like the public kink community is like this. It's like the public BDSM lifestyle people are like up here, and there's this whole ass mountain below it. They're like other people that do BDSM, and for the majority of people, they just never get to the point where they do public kink because it's not a consideration. They don't have time for it. They don't have the money for it. It's not appealing to them. And so there's lots and lots of monogamous people that do BDSM, but for the reasons I just stated, there is going to be a higher proportion of polyamorous open relationship people in the kink community than the outside world, at least based on your perception. Turns out you can't necessarily identify a poly person on site. Who would have guessed? However, there are lots and lots of people that are just plain old, simple, monogamous people that are part of the BDSM world. They're looking for their monogamous partner. But what usually ends up happening is, like, even if there are monogamous people in the kink scene, when they find a partner, they go away and they stop going to events. So that's been my experience where I live. Obviously, the overlap between poly and BDSM depends on your age group, where you live, the country you live in, the availability of like other like poly or like non-monogamous specific spaces versus like just monogamous BDSM ones. And yeah, it depends on a lot, but I think there's a misconception that like everybody is poly. That's definitely not the case. It just the factors that make up the BDSM community make it so it seems like it's more poly than it really is. Because I would actually say even the people like, oh, this is my hot take. You guys ready for this hot take? There's a lot of people that say that they're in an open relationship or poly in BDSM, and what they really mean is that my dominant male partner has a harem of female submissives and I'm supposed to tolerate it, or we're looking for a triad because we want to have another female that we can both top simultaneously that will love us equally. And whether or not those desires really count as like being like poly or would be like considered good things by the poly community is also debatable. So there you go. Mm. Speaking of public, how do you feel about those who are using various gags under masks? I don't know if that meets my criteria for plainly visible or not. My legal test of is it plainly visible or not. I would probably say that I would say it has the potential, depending on the mask and depending on the gag, that has my potential for meeting my threshold of plainly visible or not. I'm not 100% sure though. I would say I'm open to the idea. I'm not giving a hard yes or no if I'm totally okay with that or not. I can see a justification for either argument, is what I would say. I've only ever been in 2 serious relationships. I'm currently single, but I'm very curious about trying polyamory. Is that okay, or is it more of a thing I should get into when I have more life experience? I think it is totally okay to be polyamorous no matter how many relationships you have had or not had. A lot of people do end up finding the poly community. This fucking motorcycle douchebag. Yes, we're all very happy for you and your motorcycle. I don't even know if anybody heard that but me, but there's this guy that goes down my street like twice a day, every day, and it's just the loudest motorcycle. But I don't think you need to be in any particular number of relationships to be poly or not. Some people discover poly later in life when they got married really young. They got married when they were like 18, 19, 20, and they never had any other sexual partners. And then later on, they figure, I'm bisexual. I just want to have other experiences. And then they decide to open up the marriage based on that, because it's like you get married when you're 18 with not ever having any other partners at any point. Like, I can see why you're going to have a midlife crisis and decide you want to know something else in life just to see. I can understand the appeal of that. Also, some people discover they're poly like really young. They're definitely like, I don't think they do it well necessarily, because the poly community is definitely geared towards adults for obvious reasons. But there's a lot of people that discover that they're poly when they're like 16, 17, 18. And like they have some kind of open relationship like basically the entire time they're dating. with various levels of success, obviously, because like we barely teach people how to have like good relationships in a monogamous way, let alone in a poly way. So more problems for sure, more problems that way. As far as like, I think it really just depends on like how much preparation you go into things with, like how much you educate yourself in terms of like reading books and taking classes and asking questions and going in slowly, all the things you would do if you were like introducing yourself to kink for the first time. Like I think that also definitely applies to doing poly if you want to make sure you're going into it and as much of an informed way as possible. And I think, you know, really, I think if you're currently single, like now is probably the next time to try it, because you're not putting like a relationship under the pressure of opening up and deciding whether or not you like it under the premise of like another person liking it or not. Like you can decide how much you do or don't want to do poly based entirely on your own terms. Not like, I have this relationship I'm trying to open up. How does my existing partner feel about this? Like you get to explore it exactly in the way that you want to. However, you know, depending on your gender and you know other factors, it can be difficult to find partners, but like that's also true of monogamy. So, you know, yeah, I don't think there's anything that's wrong with that based on like having limited relationship experience. It's just about being honest, discovering yourself, figuring out what your needs are. I think that's really the important part. Like if you can go into it with having like had the opportunity for some really deep introspection about what your needs are, what you want from a relationship, what you can give in a relationship, your love languages, how much time you have available, you know, all of that stuff. Like the more that you can know about yourself and what you want to give in a relationship, as well as what you want to receive and what you have time for, that is going to help you way more. Because like you can date like 50 people and like not actually really have that much relationship experience, because all you've really done is you've had casual sex with somebody who's functionally a stranger, gone on 2 dates, and then never talked to them again. You might actually count that as having a relationship. So, you know, I think it's you know, just having a certain number of relationships doesn't really predict how prepared you will be for like doing poly or not. Because if you're a serial like monogamous cheater that's had like 20 or 30 relationships, you might be less prepared for ethical poly than somebody that's had 2 like solid monogamous relationships that ended for like entirely legitimate mutual reasons, right? Where you ended things amicably, you know? So it's painting things with a broad brush just based on numbers, I think, is a mistake. Fin Tom reminds me of fish. Oh no, now I can never unsee it. Yes, the fin dom, like a fin, like what is it? There's like a sailfish or something, like a fin fish. Just like there's like when they have a big dorsal fin, right? There's that. Fish biology. All right, moving on before I embarrass myself. Oh jeez, oh jeez. Okay. I want to let you know that I purchased the black with silver lock hidden collection collar. Absolutely love it. 100. I'm glad you like it. It's very nice. I've worn it frequently. I love that I can just leave it on for like days if I want to and not have to worry when I wash my face or get in the shower. It's really great. I want to get some other locks to like use with it just to have a little bit more versatility, but I am also loving my kitten collection collar long term as well. Okay. I'm at the bottom of the chat. Oh no. Okay. Sorry. Making weird noises into the microphone again. Trying to find a question. We're having good conversations about monogamy and poly and monogamous. Love it. Do you have videos about college-age people doing BDSM, participating in the community? Y'all forget the first 2 years of my channel were me in college doing BDSM. So, do I have any videos about college-age people doing BDSM, participating in the community? Yes, I do. It's the entire first 2 years of my channel. So there you go. I'm not that old. Geez, do I look ancient already? Do I look too old to be a college student? I'm offended. I guess I'm never going to grad school now. Bye. No grad school for me. I'm too old. I'm matronly. So matronly with my bat necklace. My winged eyeliner. Jeez. This isn't a BDSM question, but how do I know if I'm asexual? Oh. The camera, no likey. How do I know if I'm asexual and or bisexual? I've only been with 2 guys, not poly, and I am sex repulsed. Does being sex repulsed even count for being asexual? Whoa, there's a lot going on here. All right. I'm leaning back in my chair a little bit. Hopefully the camera is okay with that. Like, the conversation around, like, so the simplest thing I can say is that, like, sex repulsion can be a component of being asexual. It is not required. Some ace people are sexually, like, they're ambivalent or they're neutral. Other people are, like, I say the word sex positive, and like I know other people don't say that because they conflate it with the other thing, like sex, not affirming. Fuck, what is the word I'm thinking of? They're not repulsed by sex favorable. That's what it is. They're sex favorable. So that can be one aspect of being asexual, but it varies between asexual people. So I don't think that's really the barometer to go off of. The barometer you go off of is, do you experience attraction sexually to other human beings of any gender, of any kind? And a lot of findoms are just sharks. Yes, thank you. You're so right. You're so right. So, so many layers to that pun. So the barometer is, do you experience sexual attraction, yes or no? And depending on what the answer is, you could be asexual, because asexuality is not just one thing. I'm going to move here. This is what I'm going to do. I'll move this way. I know, Bandit, I'm moving. It's a problem. Okay. I think this will be good. We'll do this. Hello, everyone. I'm moving the microphone. Okay. So, and even then, it's like, if you experience sexual attraction, it doesn't necessarily discount you for being ace or not, because like you might only experience sexual attraction after you've established an emotional connection, or after you've established some kind of friendship, which would be like Demi, for example. Or you might be somebody that only experiences sexual attraction very infrequently, which would be gray A. Or you only experience sexual attraction until that attraction is reciprocated, then you're free sexual. Like there's many layers to this, and so, you know, asexuality is an umbrella term, and so it is kind of hard to maybe define and pin down exactly what makes the most sense for you. You know, I think if you're repulsed by sex, to me that would indicate, you know, but it's hard because like sex repulsion can come from a lot of things. Like if you have a trauma history, if you've been, you know, recently experienced sexual violence or abuse, like you might be like functionally sex repulsed because you're like, you have trauma around sex you haven't like dealt with yet, you know, maybe for example, or something about the body parts repulses you, but like you can be repulsed about the idea of sex and still experience attraction. You just don't want to act on it, obviously, because it's gross. Like, does that make sense? I know that sounds weird in the abstract. Like that sounds like, well, how can you be attracted if you find sex gross? But like, I don't know what to tell you guys. It happens. It's part of sex. It's weird. Okay, life's weird, and people do things in their brains, and don't worry about it. So for me, I think I would investigate if the source of the sex repulsion is something to do with, like, I find the way that I do sex kind of squeaky, or I don't like penises, or they think they look weird, like aliens or whatever. Or is it like I don't experience attraction And the indicator that I know that I don't experience attraction is the fact that I'm repulsed by sex. So breaking down the origin of it, I think will be the most helpful for you. But also, as far as like, am I ace or am I bi? Like, this is where like the split attraction model comes in, because you can be asexual and be biromantic. You can be asexual and panromantic. Like, you can experience like romantic connection to people. If you're gray A, you can still potentially experience attraction to more than one gender. Like, there's layers here, okay? There's things going on. There's layers. It's complicated. So, I think I don't necessarily also think you have to settle on one label too. I think a lot of people get kind of frustrated feeling like they have to pick out a box to live in, and they're like, oh, I gotta find where my box is before it's too late. And you don't have to do that either. Like, as long as the people that you're attracted to know you're attracted to them, and the people you're establishing relationships with know where you're coming from in terms of like your availability for a sexual interaction or a romantic interaction in the relationship, like that's what's important, not necessarily a particular label. So as long as you can be honest with your partners about like, hey, like, I'm kind of repulsed by sex. I'm not probably going to want a lot of sex in this relationship. Is that going to be a problem for you? Like, as long as you be open and honest about like where you're coming from, like the specific label doesn't matter as much. But yeah, I understand why it's helpful, but don't feel like you got to have everything figured out and have a label ready. When the important part is really like, do people you're in relationships with know what's going on? That's the important part. Hello, Brittany. Welcome. Glad you could make it. Yes. Oh, great point, Yolanda. Sex repulsion could also be from societal pressures. Being sex repulsed doesn't mean one is ace, just like being ace doesn't mean one is sex repulsed. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Social pressure. Like, especially if you were like socialized as a woman, like you were told that like liking sex is bad and like makes you a slut. And so you might just have like a lot of internal pressure to not like sex. You might have a lot of guilt around liking sex, and so you feel like you should be repulsed by it because that's what you've been taught is like what a godly woman does. If that makes sense. Is poly something you should only try if you have a good bit of experience with monogamy first? Not necessarily. I think I outlined this earlier. I think a lot of people discover their poly very young, and so it doesn't make sense for them to try monogamy if those relationships aren't satisfying for them. But I think that because we don't have a lot of representation of poly, and so a lot of people aren't finding it until they're older. I think sort of the standard right now is a lot of people have, monogamy be first. And I think that can be easier because navigating your boundaries with one person and learning how to do that is easier with one person instead of like three, or one person and their partners, or two people and their partners and their partners. Like, it gets more complicated.
Rillathune donated $5. What are your favorite kinds of scenes you are looking forward to? When we can all go to dungeons again.
What are my favorite scenes I'm looking forward to when we all go to dungeons again? Like, for me or for other people? Rope. I want to do rope again. I miss rope. I miss rope bondage. Just like, honestly, it isn't even really like for me. The things I miss about dungeons aren't getting to do certain things. Like, I don't miss, there's certain kinds of BDSM play you can only really do in a dungeon. Like, I miss like bloodplay and stuff like that. But like for me, it isn't really it's the energy. It's the being in the BDSM space with other people. Like, I've always found being in vanilla centric spaces to be like extraordinarily like painfully alienating. Like, I find being in a vanilla like college house party to be like, I literally feel like I'm disassociating. I feel like I'm on a different planet. Like, I just like, none of these people make sense. I don't understand what's going on here. This seems boring as hell. What am I doing? Like, it's like an out of body experience of just awkwardness, and I don't like it. When I'm at a BDSM club, when I'm at like a goth night, like when I'm among my people, like I feel really good. And I just want to be among my people, I want to be among my people with my people doing their things, us doing our things, and just really enjoying having fun with that, not necessarily, like specific things. Because like most things I could, God, so many loud cars today. Like most things I could probably end up doing. Like most most different types of kink scenes, I could probably figure out a way to do them just in my own house. I mean, the furniture and stuff like that, like having access to that is nice, but it's the people, it's the energy, it's the being in that space. And then once I'm in this space, then I know what I want to do, I think is the real answer. Oh, interesting. So Vera says, no, you don't mean monogamy to do poly. It's even easier if you don't have that much experience with monogamy. Interesting. If you're still here, Vera, I would love to, is it Vera or Vera as well? I would love to know why you think that. Obviously, I had monogamous experience first before I did poly, so my opinion is biased. But if you think it would be easier, I'd love to hear why. I've been hesitant to ask my daddy if I can seek out new partners again, as the last time I saw him, he asked me to transition back to being mono, which another poly YouTuber I watch considers sus. I would also consider that sus. It depended on what your original relationship agreement was. I do not believe in using power exchange to control other people's relationships based on the style of like poly that I do. Like I need my poly relationships, like the BDSM rules have to stop where like the poly relationships begin. Like you can't use the rules or the power of power exchange to tell somebody, like you can't use that as a way to veto relationships or to control what the other person does. Like that to me is icky. If you started out the relationship under the pretense that you were going to be open or be poly or whatever, and now he suddenly wants to be mono, I guess my question would be, does this person have other partners and they want you to be mono, but like they're going to see other people? Or do they just try poly and then figure out it's not really for them? Because I think at that point, you have to decide for yourself, like, which thing do I value more? Do I value being with this person or do I value being poly? And when you're still in that relationship, it can be very hard to determine that in the abstract because you're pretty likely to like want to stay in that relationship because you're really invested, you've known them for a long time, you have this wonderful BDSM thing that you do together. So being able to assess that rationally can be very difficult, but it is an important question to ask. And I think if being poly and being able to see other people is more important than like, you know, the theoretical relationship you have with this person, I think it's also worth exploring, like, when you say you want to see other people, like, what does that mean? Do you want to date other people? Do you want to be in other power exchange relationships? Do you just want to have somebody you can do a particular kink with that's not being met in the relationship you're currently in? Like, there's lots of questions that go into that. And if, like, the reason you're poly is because you simply want to do a BDSM with other people, like, you can have a monogamous relationship where you just do BDSM stuff with your friends or with people you trust that you're not in relationships with. And that's totally fine and acceptable. Maybe that's like easier for your partner to deal with, but like I think going to somebody and using your power exchange to be like, now you must be monogamous is like, I understand the appeal and I understand why that person would want to do that. I don't think that makes for like a healthy relationship, and I think that can lead to a lot of resentment long term. If you are like genuinely you need to have poly in your life and being without it would make you deeply unhappy, like you have to be honest about that. And them trying to take that thing away from you that makes you genuinely happy, like means they care more. Like if they're truly monogamous, like, you know, maybe it means that they entirely like value their feelings more than your needs, but like that means your needs are incompatible. Right. If they need you to be mono and you need to be poly to be happy, like that's going to be painful for somebody somewhere. It's my puppy's first live. Congrats. How exciting. Hello, doggo. We love doggos in the chat. Oh, Yes, very good point, Yolanda. Don't gags make one drool? Those masks are going to get wet under 10 minutes. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that because there are masks that are masks are breathable, but there are gags that are breathable. But they can also make breathing harder, and it would also just make it harder for the mask to fit properly. So yeah, I feel like I'm leaning more towards like, don't wear a gag under a mask. Like maybe if you're like walking around in a park or whatever where like it's pretty open and people are in the distance, like maybe sure, or like you're just going on a walk around the block, like more fine. Probably not in a grocery store though. Probably not somewhere indoors. That's where it's getting sus for me, personally speaking, in my own risk profile. Oh, what happens? Please don't tell me I just accidentally ended the event. What happened? What did I do? Why did I click? Okay, for some weird reason, it just totally like my whole like screen just like went black, like on YouTube. I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is happening here? Mermaids or phantoms. You know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of fin whales. That's what I was thinking of. I was kind of trying to come up with like fish that have fin in the name. I was thinking of fin whales, which are not fish. I tried. I was in pursuit of another job back in late 2019, and he was fully supportive of it. But I don't think I can back stuff from being monogamous, whether it's fully poly or some other flavor. Yeah, I mean, so he wasn't supportive of it, but then he also like wanted you to be monogamous. I don't know how supportive that is, but yeah, it can lots of confusing, threatening, scary feelings. And frankly, here's my hot take. Dom's in the room. I think dominants are they're not good at tolerating pain oftentimes, and they're really not tolerant of emotional pain. So they try to control it in ways that may not be healthy for poly. Like if we just ended up actually doing another polyamory stream. Is if someone is okay in a poly relationship, but also okay in a monogamy one, does that make them poly or mono? That makes them... So, I don't know if there's a label for this. Maybe there is and I'm just forgetting it. But you can be okay doing either, right? Like you can be like relationship ambivalent essentially, where like as long as it's constructed in a way that you agree with, you can be happy in monogamy or in polyamory. Some people that feel polyamory is like a really like deep seated orientation for them, like don't understand that. Other people see polyamory as like a practical relationship choice based on their needs and their, sort of ability level for, paying attention to relationships. And I absolutely think that there could be people, and there are people that are genuinely able to be happy in either poly or mono relationships, and it depends entirely on the circumstances they happen to find themselves in. Do you think starting off a poly relationship by saying you can't give much is okay, or should they just not date? So actually, there's a concept in the book that I'm reading. There's a concept in the book that I'm reading where they're talking about like compatibility issues, and they talk about how everyone exists on a scale of like 1 to 10 in terms of being independent, like being just entirely independent on the far left side of the spectrum, like a 0 or 1. And then on the 10 side of the spectrum, completely codependent, unable to exist without a partner. And most people exist somewhere between a 2 and an 8. The people are very strongly independent and need a lot of alone time. They like being able to be on their own. Other people really, really, really value having like a primary nesting partner, having a lot of very closely intertwined relationships that are very active in their life on a daily basis. And I think it's always more important to be honest about like what you can give. And more importantly, I think like really framing it as like what you want from a relationship. Because if you're a really strongly independent person, you're really focused on your career, you're a single parent, you're trying to go to grad school, like whatever reason, you just happen to either need or really want a lot of your own time, like letting people know up front, like, hey, this is like what I'm available for. Like, I think people in poly find that less scary than like in monogamy, because like if you're not their only partner. So like if you are like, hey, I'm only really going to be available for like one date night a week, or my work is going to be my priority. I work 70 hours a week. I'm not going to be able to text you all the time. Like, whatever it is that you're sort of constrained by, being open with it, I think, is almost always more appreciated than concealing it and being like, just acting like you're available for something that you're not really available for. So rather than saying like, I'm only available for this much, I'm sorry, like the way that I would frame it is like, this is what I'm looking for in a relationship right now. And then outline like, hey, I'm really loving my career right now. I'm really work focused. I really like investing a lot of time into like my personal projects. And I also like to have a lot of time for, recharging by myself. I definitely want to pursue a relationship, but I'm kind of thinking of something that's more, we get to enjoy a lot of our own times like apart doing our own things, but then we still have opportunities to reconnect and have like focused us time. Like, that's how I would think of framing something like that, like in as honest of a way as you can describe. Don't use my exact words, whatever is true for you, say that, and let the person know that that's sort of what you're doing and what you're available for. But that's the thing about poly is because you and they generally have more than one partner, it makes it a lot easier to navigate for people that don't have a lot of, relationship time. And there's also this concept of a thing called solo poly, which you may have heard of before, which is basically this concept where you are your own primary partner. So like the primary focus of your time and your attention is on like you and your life and your things. Some people consider this to be very selfish, but for some people it's entirely practical. Like if you're dealing with like a lot of chronic pain issues or trying to work, you're a single parent, like you got to have your focus on that, like that's where your time's going. You got to be realistic for what you're available for and what you want, right? And so you might be in a scenario where like you are kind of casually dating a lot of people, or you're seeing people but not on a really regular basis, and you are kind of staying your own focus, and that's perfectly reasonable. What do you think is the best way to get started in BDSM? Books, partners, groups, classes, etc. My recommended combination is independent reading with books, preceded by or followed by going to munches, and then going to classes and meeting people as friends, all the while continuing books and other educational materials on your own to supplement what you are observing in the real life community and to answer your questions. And it really depends. Like, also, it's like, how do you learn? Right? Do you learn by observation? Do you learn by reading? Do you learn by trying out for yourself? Do you have to think about what your own learning style in that way is? Like, whatever way will help you learn the most and understand yourself the best, that is the method that I would focus on first. At the risk of sounding cheap, any advice on finding free online BDSM classes because someone else has access to your card statements or whatever that you don't want them to find out you're kinky? No, that's totally legit. So um, a lot of BDSM classes, at least the ones that have been happening online, are like either entirely free or on a sliding scale. So if you want to be able to go to BDSM classes, a lot of them are free or like donation based, and you don't have to donate to them. I would recommend though, if you have the money to pay and the ability to pay, you could get like a prepaid card. Like you get you could get a Visa gift card, for example. You could see if there's some kind of like alternate way to pay, maybe that would get around like having a credit card statement or like some kind of billing statement pop up with something. I can see the reluctance around that, if you're having to disclose that to people, but Yeah, if there's like a way where you could get around like using a gift card or a prepaid card or something, or just some sort of way where you can have that be separate, I think that would be best. So like if you have cash, for example, like you can get cash and then get a Visa card and use that. But like there's lots of free resources as well. If you go on FetLife, there's lots of classes that are free or donation based, and that would be the simplest way to do it. It's very common. A lot of people just like to volunteer their time and teach and don't expect to be paid for it. And I think that's reasonable. I think we should pay people where we're able to and where they want it, but not everybody. A lot of people are like, fucking, I make 6 figures working in the tech industry. Save your money. Like they don't care about being paid because like they're already really privileged in terms of how much money they make. They're not looking for donations. Bandit made a little noise that was cute. She's snoozing. Snoozing girl. Okay. I'm going to say we have 15 minutes. I'm going to end a little bit early. I'm going to end probably around like 45, 50, somewhere in there, depending on, if I get into a rant too close before the end of the stream or not. But we're going to end a little bit early because I got something I got to do. Oh, so the reason why doing poly without any monogamy experience is because you don't construct your romantic personal life around monogamy. You don't deal with cheating being the worst thing imaginable, or jealousy being the way of expressing caring. Oh, that's true. If you create... Oh, fuck. Okay. I went back down to the bottom. Let me scroll. If you create your personal way of being in relationships without a part of the internalized idea that monogamy is the natural way, you don't deal with your own customs. That is totally true. I think the one thing though is I think not being in monogamy can avoid some of that, but I don't think it avoids all of it because monogamy is dominant in our culture so much that you're still exposed to those ideas being the right or the good thing to do, even if you don't have monogamous relationships yet. So movies, your parents, what you're taught in school about relationships and sex, your friends' relationships, you're still exposed to the idea of monogamy in a very, 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 very consistent way. But if you don't have practice with it, or if you kind of are able to separate your personal values from what's going on in society, it can certainly make it a lot easier to separate those two things and have a better experience without that baggage. How do I know if I want a power exchange relationship versus something else? Okay, I feel like I'm about to give a very unsatisfying answer. But honestly, the only way that you can really know is by trying it. I don't know what the or something else is in this scenario. Is the or something else, I want a top-bottom relationship, or I want a vanilla relationship for that matter, or I want partial power exchange versus total power exchange. Lots of others that could be part of this scenario. But I really think, because we talked about this earlier in the stream, reality versus fantasy, right? You can have fantasies. You can think about something a lot. You can think, oh yeah, this is gonna be a really awesome thing to do. I can't wait to do a power exchange relationship. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, actually, I'm not really into that. Yeah. And so what I would recommend, if you're not sure if you will be into power exchange or not, what I would do is I would, if I was getting into a relationship, I would start it with the premise of just be upfront. I don't know if I'm going to be into power exchange or not. I really need to go slowly and build something that's with somebody you trust, obviously, but that is going to build up slowly. So that way you can really, before you get in too deep, you can tell, okay, I think I'm going to be into this, or no, I need to back off entirely. You can also definitely do power exchange and just scenes as well. So keep that in mind too. If you are already doing other types of BDSM and you're doing scenes and, you're, like doing floggings or bondage or whatever else, you can incorporate power exchange as part of that, whether that be using titles or being ordered around or, you know, being made to kneel or do certain things that people associate with power exchange. You can get a little bit of the flavor of it in scenes you might already be doing and seeing whether or not you like those or just like reject them entirely. You're like, no, actually, I'm not into this. Also, like the partner you're doing stuff with can affect it as well because, you know, we don't always want like power exchange with everybody. So you might not be like attracted to somebody in a way where you want to do power exchange with them. So also like keep that in mind too. It's not always going to be somebody's a dom and you're a sub, so that means you should do power exchange together. Like there's also the element of attraction is certainly a factor as well. Okay. Mm. I'm pretty sure I'm asexual. I've only ever been with guys, but I think women are beautiful too. How do I know if it's in a gay way or in a straight appreciation way? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way you can ever conclusively know. Because I think there's so much of our society, especially for women, that's like the idea of being with another woman is like there's no examples of it. Like there's no way to even visualize what that kind of relationship would look like. So it kind of traps you into believing you can only be with men, and it's like it's very toxic. I don't know how to suggest something you should do to figure out what your true feelings on this thing are. I think it really just it's like the only way to really know is to just like be able to sit with yourself and have a conversation with yourself about like what do I really want? What do I really want from a relationship? How do I want this energy in my life? Like, am I really looking for just a close female friend that I like aesthetically appreciate? Or do I want like a romantic connection with somebody? Like, do I want to build a life with a person like this? You know, for example, is sort of the questions I would ask to myself. But it's complicated, okay? It's not a like answer this one question and all your problems will be figured out because it's hard. It's real hard. What are your thoughts on DOMs bottoming so that they know what all of their toys feel like, not only impact toys, but all sorts of things? I'm pro that. I had a video where I talked about like, do dominants need to be submissive, like first? And I don't think you need to go through any sort of like 1 year of training as a submissive before you're allowed to call yourself a dom. I don't believe in that. But I do think that testing out toys in yourself is really useful so you can see how they work. You can see your skin reacts to things. You can understand how intense the thing is for when you're using it on other people. And I don't think that it has to be just impact play toys. I think that works for practicing needles, practicing fire play, using a TENS unit, using a zapper, like using electroplay toys in general. There's lots of things that you can do that you can just do on yourself to get an accurate understanding of how something works, how it feels on the skin, without like having to have an actual human guinea pig that's somebody besides you. So I think that is something I would really strongly encourage. I wouldn't necessarily call it a requirement, but I think it can give you a lot of very useful information without like inadvertently risking a bottom, you know? That's sort of the other side of that coin. Okay. All right, let's see. Got oh, gosh, it keeps going back down to the bottom. I keep missing questions. Okay. Um ba, 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 da, 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 da. Um What if you are, quote, way older and have no idea how to start seeking sexual relations? I'm not sure what this is, poly or am I gay or which question that's in relation to. There are definitely, especially in the BDSM community, there's lots of events that are specifically geared towards older people that you can absolutely meet people in your own age demographic. Totally a thing you can do. Not having any sexual relationship experience by that age would probably be unusual, but I don't think would necessarily be a world stopper for anybody either. Aw, thank you. I like doing makeup like this because it takes less time and it melts off my face less quickly. I do kind of wish I put on like proper lipstick though. That is my one regret. That is my one regret, but thank you. It is nice to not have a melty face during the summer. What is your opinion on the latex fetish? I think lots of people are into it, and that is fine for them. And it's very common. That's my opinion about it. I don't know what else to say. There will be no kink shaming here. I'm new to the community. I get the feeling that when people use the term vanilla to describe, quote, traditional relationships, it is used that way in a derogatory sense. Is it meant that way? I wouldn't consider it to be. My understanding is somebody told me recently, apparently on TikTok, the little Zoomers are wonderful little Zoomer children. They have decided that vanilla is an insult, and they call each other vanilla as an insult, which is like, Zoomers, you're ruining it for all of us. Zoomers, no. Zoomers, no. Stop it. In the community that is full of mature adults, the term vanilla is not intended to be a derogatory term. It is similar to using the term cisgendered. It simply means that is a way of describing something where you use cisgender to describe people that aren't trans. We use vanilla to describe people that aren't kinky. You also have the term non-kinky as well, which is a little bit more general, and I think people are less offended by. But it's not intended to be an insult. It wasn't meant to be that way. It's simply a descriptor because like vanilla is considered like, because also it's like a more general term that exists outside of BDSM. Like having a vanilla video game means it hasn't been modified. You know, having a vanilla PC means you haven't like modified certain parts. Like vanilla is used as to describe sort of like the basic state, right? Not boring, not like, you know, not like the negative, I think, adjectives that people associate with it. It's just simply describing like, this is sort of the basic general accepted norm. And like kink is the thing that deviates from that. So that's why that term is used that way. But I understand that some people do intend it as an insult, but also like any word can be intended with as an insult with like the intention for it to be an insult, but it's not meant to be. I think, you know, and it's funny because anytime you have a minority group that finds a term to describe the majority group goes, oh, they're trying to find a way to insult us. Oh no. Because like that's what they do to kinky people. That's what they do to trans people. That's what they do to people, gay people, whatever. Like because the dominant society like constantly shits on minority groups like all the time and just like makes their lives really hard. They expect that other groups treat them the same way as they treat those groups. So they look at kinky people saying the word vanilla and they think about it the same way that they use terms like freak and weirdo towards people that are into BDSM. But the intention isn't there. The malice isn't there. It's just a word. Hopefully that helps explain it a little bit better. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to answer one more question and then I'm going to go. All right. What question is it going to be? I wish I could roll the dice for like picking which question I was going to pick next or the ones that are remaining. Let's see. What do we got? What do we got that I haven't covered yet? This has been like a hardcore like poly stream. I didn't mean for it to be, but that's what happens when we have just a Q&A. We just go in a direction. Oh, I haven't heard this term before. The big local club in Nashville emphasizes authority exchange rather than power exchange because consent is king, the power remains with the sub. Okay. My eye roll probably indicates my opinion about that. I'm also fond of trust exchange. What do you think of the difference between power, authority, and trust exchange? The term I have heard used is, there's already an existing term. It's called authority transfer. And different people resonate with the term power exchange and authority exchange. I'm not about to tell anybody in any community what term they should use when they have so many different ones to pick from, which essentially functionally are the same thing. But like, you know, if you want to say authority transfer, if you want to use power exchange, I dislike it because consent is king, the power remains with the sub. Because to me, what that does is saying the submissive has all the power. Like, I don't like that term. I have a video from like 3 years ago where I ranted about that. Because for me, like, power should be something that, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like saying anything like, well, really, in BDSM, it's actually the submissive that holds all the power, is like a very surface level kind of basic understanding of BDSM, because what you imply when you say that is that dominants don't have boundaries. Dominants don't have limits. Dominants can't have their consent violated. If it does, it doesn't matter. And like, because of like the fact that submissives are all the ones in control, they're the ones that can like end. Like, it's. I'm not a fan. I think it's a very very surface level way of like thinking about kink. That people say because it makes vanilla people feel more comfortable with BDSM, because it's like, oh, well, actually the submissive is the one that can stop things at any time and they're the ones with the safe word. No, anybody can stop the scene at any time. Anybody can have a safe word. Anybody can call red. Everybody should have limits. Everybody should have boundaries. That power in that sense is on all sides of the relationship, and it should be. And like, I can see why. Personally, I still prefer the term power exchange. If you want to use authority transfer, do whatever. Trust exchange, I haven't heard of. I feel like I get the vibe from that. That's like, we're just splitting hairs, right? It's the same thing when like people try to use sub labels for kitten play, like, oh, I'm a Nico kitten player. I'm a whatever, like just whatever label they use to like subdivide things. I feel like at some point we just get to the point where we're being redundant. Like, I feel like trust should also be part of this. Like, I don't think the term power exchange excludes trust being a factor in that. I don't think that power excludes authority being a part of that. It's not explicitly called out in the label, but like, I don't think there's something about power exchange that means that trust shouldn't also be there. And I feel like we are. When we talk about power exchange, how many times have I emphasized doing stuff with people you trust in this live stream? Like 3 times, 4 times. I don't think we need to call that out specifically as like a trust exchange. Like, I guess I don't get it. Maybe just, it is not for me. Not for me. Maybe not the designated audience for that, I guess is what I would say. Oh shit, that's the truth. Yeah, it can also be that people are like basically saying that submissives are lying when they say they're giving up some portion of their power. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, little submissive, you don't even know what you're doing. You're not really giving up your power. Okay, well, thanks for telling me what's going on in my own head, I guess. Thanks. Okay. For our final question for today, mayonnaise is an instrument, but only when you use it in a tuba. There you go. That's your mayonnaise answer for today. I gotta get going, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. This was a lot of fun. I think we answered a lot of really great questions and had a lot of fun conversations. Hopefully you learned something. I'm gonna have a video coming out real soon about the James Charles scenario. That's like, I literally had to re-edit that thing like 3 times. That's gonna be coming out on Tuesday. So look forward to that, pending any sort of disaster that happens between now and Tuesday that requires me to get rid of the video. Hopefully not, fingers crossed. And I will see you next Friday, 6 p.m. as per usual, Pacific Standard Time here on the wonderful West Coast. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye.